I just love your bookshelf.
I know.
Much.
Like the way the light is hitting you is just
Thank you.
so delicious. Peace, y'all. My name is DW, pronouns they, them, and this is
Peace. I'm Kinga, pronouns she, they.
And together we are
Counterculture Educator. And we help creative leaders turn around the cultures of their community, one authentic relationship at a time, through through artistic expression, community engagement, self-care, and play.
Wonderful. And today we brought the homie because we do counterculture conversations with our homies because we thought we have so many great conversations with our homies. Why not record them for the world to have access to all the great things we have access to? So that's why we brought in the homie we know as Kinnethia. But before we get in there, I want to make sure I do a land acknowledgement. I just wanted to acknowledge the land that we are on, which is Nipmuc, Hokumtuk, and Wabanaki lands. And I want to shift it over to you to introduce yourself because we know you as Kinnethia, but the world may know you as something different.
Yeah, I'm Kinnethia Tolson-Johnson. I am just joining this conversation from Milwaukee. Super excited and super just here and ready to chat and like get into it. Yeah.
Tell us what you do.
Right now I'm a program director, and I work at a wonderful, cool, dope organization that is growing and ever striving to work with young people and do some really dope justice work here in Milwaukee. So yeah, just stepped into this role, so it's very new, but my background has always been in youth development. It's been my heart, my joy, and most importantly, my grace and how I walk through this world.
Yes.
So, do we get your pronouns?
She, her.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So, I mean, this is a very full, before we get started, we have so many things. Before we get started though, I want to ask all of us, something that lit you up this week, something that brought you joy this week. Can you share it with the people?
Ooh, something that brought me joy this week. So I've been trying to do this jogging thing where I'm like moving fast, not walking, not running, but just somewhere a nice happy in between. And I started that when we like went into the quarantine, went into the closure and everything. And it was very fun. And I stopped it right when we decided to like, open it back up a little bit, and that was okay. But then this week I went again and I was dreading it. I thought it was not going to like go well, but then yeah, I did it and I survived. I'm here. It's on Friday now. That was on Tuesday, and so I just felt really good about doing that outdoors. So moving fast, jogging, if you will, outdoors.
I gotta guess me some of that.
Okay. What about you?
Alternatively, my moon cycle started for me on Monday, and it was after 2 months of the yoga teacher training that I was doing. That was really just a lot of work, and it was a lot of yoga. And so I was wiped out as soon as I got it on Monday. And I was so excited to get back into life, like get back into all the work after all this project had ended. And I hit a wall. And my joy is that I spent the whole day sleeping in the sun in the middle of the day. And I rarely let myself do something like that, like sleep when the sun is out. It's really hard for me to do that because I love the sun. But when I do it, it just feels like so rebellious, like the best kind of rest, because it's right smack in the middle of the day when I'm supposed to be doing all the things. Yeah. So yeah, my joy is the giant day nap that I took on Monday and into Tuesday.
Yeah, what's your moon cycle?
My moon cycle?
What is that?
Menstruation, when I bleed monthly.
Why do you call it your moon cycle?
Why do I call it my moon cycle?
Yeah, I'm curious. Why you call it? I'm looking for chapsticks too. Why do you call it your moon cycle?
Well, there's a lot of historical connection about women bleeding and the moon, and that we cycle on the same cycle as the moon, and that also our cycles match up with the moon, which is also why a lot of women have their cycles at the same time. We're drawn to the cycle of the moon.
Yeah.
Dropping it on us. All right. So they brought me joy. So I've been doing this yoga, right? So, you know, I have a torn Achilles and a double tear, and that's been really 2 years of healing, and I haven't run and stuff like that. And I picked up yoga because of Kinga and her doing all her yoga stuff. And I was in a headstand the other day, and I was like, Kinga, let me show you this headstand. And I personally think that Kinga didn't believe that I could do the headstand the way that I had done it the other day. I was like, look, I'm doing these headstands. I'm serious about this. I'm doing it, you know, and I don't think Kinga believes me. I was like, I was in there for real. And the other day, because I was doing some trap yoga, and trap yoga is a whole thing. And then I showed Kinga the headstand, and I know she was blown away because I was in that headstand for like a good 10, 11 breaths, like straight, really, really erect, you know?
Yeah.
That's the best word I can use for it, right?
That's real.
I was in it, just feeling all the juiciness in my spine, and it brought me so much joy because Kinga didn't say one word. She was just, you know, when someone does, they just, right?
Except you didn't see my face. My face was like, the thing is, you know, I realized after you came down that my doubt was about me. It wasn't about DW. It was, I know that I tend to fall backwards instead of forwards when I'm coming out. And that's my own fear for myself. And I put that all upon you. So my apologies for doing that. And when after you came out of it, I realized that was my fear that I was projecting onto you. And then I was like, oh wow, maybe if I didn't have fear the way maybe if I didn't have fear the way that you don't have fear in your headstand, maybe my headstands would be better.
Ooh. That's a word, DW.
Ooh. Ooh.
But that's some insightful stuff.
Yeah.
Woo! Sounds like a good transition though. Let's get into this. Program development. We were talking about this, Kinga, you had brought up. When we talk about counter-culture ways of looking at program development, there's something you had said, and I want you to repeat. I'm trying to remember what really.
Well, I think it's just about us having a conversation about what is the culture around program development, program and development world. What culture do we see happening? And what is working there? What's not working there? Like, what is your insight on that? And what are your thoughts on that? And what is the vision for another way? If we didn't have to fit towards the culture of how things are right now, how they're expected to be, or how we're taught they need to be, what would that program development look like? And I imagine, knowing you, that you already do a lot of that. We're already breaking boundaries, and we're already, you know, blurring lines all the time by saying, well, why do we have to do it that way? Why can't we do it this way? So I think that's the conversation I want to have with you is, what does that look like in program development? What are the cultural barriers that we need to be, you know, sensitive to, and which ones do we need to shift and recreate?
Right, and you know, I'm curious about that. Hold on, the crickets are going for a solo now. Okay,
I got you.
So we're gonna close this window.
Yo, that's real.
It says us. We're gonna be in this conversation,
right?
So yeah, I think looking at that, and also what does it mean to be working, designing it, and working with young people, and then also what does it mean to be working with people like non-Black and brown people who are doing this work, working with, I mean, there's so many things there. So I'm just going to give you the space to kind of your initial thoughts.
Yeah. So I want to be specific because I work in program development, specifically youth program development, and then also specifically youth program development that is during out of school time. So in non-traditional like educational spaces. So whether that be an after school program, at a community center, at your place of worship, like just not in school. And I think that it's important to mention that because we have, like when you're program designing, that can also be, a lot of people compare that to like also curriculum design, and which is very, very similar, but also what I focus on is not necessarily like hitting Common Core standards or like the traditional educational route. Like that's, I'm about like, let's just create it, and, or if you build it, they will come type stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll just go with the flow that way. So when it comes to program development, I am very specific about my particular work always being in communities where young people look like me. And like, we might have been able, and we might have been able to like walk in similar ways of life, or just working specifically with young people of color, really. When it comes to that, my number one rule with program or curriculum development is for it to be youth-led, for it to be something that will blow people out of the water. Like, I don't want young people to ever come to my space and feel like we're going to have this very structured time and we have all these things that we got to hit. And it's just going to be very similar to what they just spent 8 hours doing, right? I want the young people to lead it. I think that that's the most important thing, because we can think about all the things that we think are really hype, really dope, really cool. See, I'm even trying to come up with words that might be in right now. And I might be out of touch. You know what I'm saying? Because that's real. I like low key, I called my sister the other day and I was just like, what's some words that are in right now? Run me some words that the young people are saying, you know? And so, but like, you know, with that being said, if I don't have the words, I also don't know, like what, you know, I don't know the specific topics we might need to cover, the specific mediums that we might need to use. Like, I am learning the TikTok. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole thing. The TikTok is really deep for me, and it's, you know what I'm saying? But like that brings me to my second point, is that when you walk into a space, especially with program development, is that another thing that really works well in the world that I'm walking into is when I am not there solely just to be the person who's educating, right? So like, I always walk into a space and I remember like, nah, I'm coming here to learn too, right? So after this, hopefully we can maybe talk about some different like things and tools that might be useful for leadership development. And you all are gonna teach me just as much as I'm going to be teaching in this space as well. Like, yeah, and that exchange to me is incredibly important.
I have like questions already off the bat. Like, like, the 3 things that have come up, you know, like, because I heard you say, and I'm going to do my best to trace it back. Like, I heard you say you do non-traditional programming. That's something that you focus on, opposed to Common Core and stuff like that. And I want to investigate that a little bit about, because I think that when we're in schools too, and also this is, when we talk about programming in schools and having to reach certain goals or what standards, trappings that right. At least I've experienced people being seeming as though they can't get out of those things. Like, this is a trap and I have to do this, where I have to do this and it has to go this way. So we're talking about timing and stuff like that. It has to go a certain way based off the structure that was given to us. And what you say is that you do out of school programming or like after school programming, but I'm also hearing you say it's about how you investigate certain, how do I say this? Instead of working with the rules, like, right, you're investigating ways that you can create space that's needed for the situation that it calls for, rather than I have to hit this standard. So even if you're in school and you're finding people, which I find a lot with program development, is that I'm in school and people are so driven of like, we have this much time, this is what we have to do, and that I see the harm that it causes the young people of even anxiety that builds in them of like, I know I'm going to go in this meeting, no one's going to ask me how I am, They're going to have to cover down to even like an IEP meeting, right? Like, I'm going to come in, they're going to cover this, they're going to talk to me about this. What do I need to change? What do I need this? And I've seen young people come in and do that, and none of that shift towards the value of what's happening in that young person's life before they even walk into the room, or even saying hello to them. Right. So I'm saying that to say, like, has that been your experience as well? Because I know we're talking about in school and out of school, but what has your experience been with that specifically?
Absolutely. So I definitely walked into, I've worked both in traditional school spaces, like in a classroom all day doing academics. But working in this type of space out of school time, or non-traditional educational time during the school day, if you will. What I realize is, one, structure is definitely important, right? Like, we depend on it. Like, young people also can, in a lot of ways, depend on structure, and that's very real. Mm-hmm. But there's also, like, creating a different type of structure is what is needed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really what's needed right now. It's like creating a different type of structure. I mean, even with where we're at right now in this world, and like what's going on around us, like, we have to create some new type. Like, this is such an exciting time, especially for youth work, because we can be so incredibly innovative, so incredibly creative, so incredibly like just hitting, like just really hitting some areas that like have not been tapped in, right? So like making a check-in into the structure, like creating some new norms, if you will, like, and I think that that's the most important thing. So like, I think that what I was like wanting to talk about with that was this example that I had of walking into a space, and like this was a co-facilitated space, and like my co-facilitator they were tripping over the fact that this young person did not have a pencil, right? And I'm trying to figure out why. Right. Why didn't this young person not have a pencil, right? Because definitely the tools have been given, right? This was in the beginning of like a school year. We all, like, everything was in, all the students had what they needed. And if they didn't, they were definitely given them by other people. And this person was like just tripping over the fact that there was no pencil for this young person. And I'm just kind of like, yo, like, well, if we're going to be that deep, like, did you ask why? Right. Like, did you ask why? Did you ask what happened to the pencil? Like, is the pencil representing something else that's also not present right now? Like, that's just kind of like really the best example that I can give in terms of thinking about, like, we got to get to the deeper meanings of things. And like, but I also realized that it may be, if this person, my co-facilitator, didn't ask the question why, maybe because why may not be a constant word in their vocabulary, you know? Like, I'm talking about the why all the time, you know? Like, when someone gives me a whole different, gives me a situation or gives me a task, why are we doing that like that? You know? And it's not even to be disrespectful or to question anybody's like process or strategies or whatever they want to do. No, like, but seriously, no, but why? Because I need to, in order for me to be on board with this, I need you to run me a why.
Yeah, I need to know what we're doing and what is the purpose. And I think that that's kind of a human need to be able to tie it back. You know, if you want someone to successfully do something, and so we as society have taught our children that saying why is disrespectful. And so you just said, like, oh, not to be disrespectful, because we, for some reason, I equate asking why as disrespectful. When if a child is asking why, like, okay, we all know that that's a lot, and that can be seen as disrespectful. So how do we explain that to a child? That when you're constantly questioning someone and you're not taking time to absorb, you know, or you're not thinking about it yourself, that is disrespectful, or maybe it's annoying, or what is it exactly? You know, but for us to just equate asking why as disrespectful, it's not. You know, I think it's necessary for people to know why they're doing something, for them to be passionate about it, for them to feel connected to it. But instead, we want people to go through motions of just, oh, well, because I said so. because it's what needs to get done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to ask also too.
But why is it the thing that needs to get done?
Right. I'm hearing you say that when you are working with young people specifically, that you meet them with the spirit of inquiry, or you meet people with the spirit of inquiry in general. Like, it's important meeting people with open-ended ways of being, rather than what's the other way that we can be, right? So rather than assuming assumptive, right? Rather than being assumptive, being in the spirit of inquiry. Well, what happened? You know, thinking about the person, thinking about the full person of, I've seen this person and they don't have a pencil, but I know you got a pencil, and I also know that there's certain things about you, characteristics about you that may lead up to you not having a pencil. There may be a reason why, and I didn't ask that question, and I just assumed that you had this bad behavior,
but that's where the bias comes in, because that's where you're like, okay, what bias are you applying to say that this child either wasn't responsible enough to keep their own pencil because they're a kid, or maybe they're not, maybe you don't see them as a responsible person, maybe because of the demographic, or because of, you know, the home that they come from. There's so many different things that we apply to add to like the misperception, right? Because we're not really looking at the whole picture. It's what you're saying. We're not looking at the whole person to say, okay, well, what is it that happened? Because I believe that you are somebody who wants to be successful. I believe that you are somebody who is responsible. You know, I believe that you did everything in your power to keep your pencil. Well, tell me what happened that made it that you don't have your pencil anymore, so that we can figure out how to address that.
Exactly. Because I also think that when you ask, like when you actually open up with a question like that, like, oh, well, what happened with it?
Right.
You know, like where did you, what happened? You know, like I also think that can open up many more doors into this young person's life, right? You know, like I have had many of young people come into spaces and really need a one-on-one check-in, you know, like not ready to be a part of everybody else. Like they needed a minute. And like, if I need a minute as an adult, I need to also respect that young people also need a minute, because guess what? They're also human. So like, we also need to go like with that route as well. But I think that with those type of conversations, with those inquiry type of introduction questions, are extremely beneficial in like connecting before moving on to anything else. And I not only say that for like check-ins, but also finding out what young people know before just preaching at young people about this specific topic. Like if we are talking, for instance, if we're talking about math, and we all know that 2 + 2 is 4, then we don't need to start there, right? Even if the curriculum says that that's where we're supposed to start. If we all know that 2 + 2 is 4, then let's skip that chapter and now let's start over here, right? And I think that also, I always go in with working with young people with an idea of a plan, you know, but like, and then letting that guide me for where we're going to go. Because if we have very clear definitions of what it means to have a sense of peace, then we're just not going to start with that. We're going to move on to something else that may not have been on this idea list that I had when I came in here. Like, and that's also like, I'm a firm believer that all of the spaces that I enter, I'm supposed to be there for a reason, and the reason may not be known to me at that moment in time, and it may not be on all of the research and all the it may not be amongst all the research and preparation that I did for this very moment. Like, I think that's, you know, sometimes especially in some of these type of spaces, depending on what the conversation is, you just got to really go with the flow, and that's okay. That's
it goes back to what we're saying about the structure and having structure, because structure is important for us all to feel secure, grounded, but to have some type of structure within the structure that allows for flexibility. That is my ideal life. And I always say the way I love to live my life is to have structure, but then have that flexibility with whatever it is that you're doing. Because
Right.
it might not turn out the way that you intended it to, or that you thought it might. And having that non-attachment really helps you and everybody else stay in the moment into what is that actually matters. Like, again, going back to the why, like, what are we actually here for? What are we even doing? Why are we here?
Right.
We lose that point when we stay stuck in the structure.
I want to go and that, like, investigate that a little bit more. We talk about structure, because it's also like being real about the structure of institution and what institutions were created from whiteness, right? And so, like, the idea of patriarchy, right? And when I say whiteness, it's not like whiteness is a construct, right? Not white people, but the construct, like race construct. So just getting people to think, like, you have to think of it as this construct that we are all working to unprocess, to unlearn. Right. And so giving that space of knowing how do those constructs show up in the work that you're doing with young people, even in maybe the work that you're doing with your colleagues, like in programming, what are the things that you're finding that may be an obstacle to getting into the work the way that it needs to, the way that you're describing, asking the why, and being like, I would say, even tender and understanding. Like, what are some of those structures that get in the way, or that you see, whether they are in people, whether they are in literally the structures? What are some of those things that come up for you?
Or historically?
Yeah. So, like I said, I work predominantly in non-profit spaces as well. And this, with speaking of structures in general, nonprofits can be very, very intentional. And that sometimes is open for interpretation of whether that intent is going to be productive or if it's going to be harmful, right? And that's important to be able to recognize, especially as a Black person working in nonprofits. But when it comes especially to breaking down and unlearning some of these things, especially when working with young people, I find that it's really important to, one, understand the space and the institution in which it's being like facilitated. So if this is like traditional school, or if this is an after school program that is being, pretty much when I'm thinking about the constructs, I'm thinking about the adults that are involved, right? Because I think that we are in a lot of ways perpetuating a lot of different cycles that we hope, we claim, we create missions and visions around, saying that like we're here to do the work, and then not necessarily doing that, right? So like, it's, to me, it's not only, it's when it comes to the construct specifically, looking at the adults who are involved and like where they're at, where the knowledge is there, where the intent is there. Like, I look at intent specifically on that scale of like, I sometimes leave spaces, I'm just like, oh yeah, they have intent. I'm still trying to figure out if it's good or if it's going to be really destructive, but it's, there's been some thought behind it for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious more, because I want to dig in a little bit more, because I think that we don't talk about this. And one of the examples that when I was doing some programming at a school, one of the teachers came up to me and said, I want what you have, like that, because a student had walked by. And she's like, see, I want the students to respect me, not love me. And I was like, because that's not what I have. Right? Like, that's not, but they interpreted that exchange with a student that I had for them to say hello to me, you know, and say, hey, DW, how you doing? And stop in the middle of the hall and say that to me. They interpreted that as them respecting me, and there's no love being there.
Wow.
Right? When I interpret, and when I looked at it, I was like, wow, I'm not even thinking about it that way.
Right.
I'm thinking about how much I love this person. I love the person that I want them to do well. I want them to be well. I want everything for them. I want them to be able to have all of the goodness and the joy that I feel.
Yeah.
That is what ignites me to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
So I always say to them, like, I'm not focused on, see the difference, I don't focus on the rules. I focus on the relationship. Right? So, but that to me was like, wow, that is what institutional thinking is like.
That's literally what I was just thinking. That's literally
it's like, you're going to do everything in your power for them to respect you. And I wonder what that is. So now let's talk about it in terms of what we know about institutions and the whiteness that's create institutions. What do we know about violence in that lane? I want you to respect me. What are the things that we talk about with racial trauma of, you want me to respect you? What is that attached to? What does that mean? Does that mean that you get to yell at me and I have to stay? That means I can't ask why?
Right.
Right. That means that you're gonna ask me not you're not gonna ask me what happened.
Yeah.
Right? And so this person was like thinking about it to me very backwards. I'm like, oh, love on the back end of love is wanting to be in relationship with you. And when they want to be in a relationship with you, they don't want to be in a space where they're causing harm.
Right.
Which would associate with disrespect.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about that, and I want to like investigate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm this whole thing of like the love versus respect is mind-boggling to me. Like, I just don't understand. You have to be able to go into spaces and just be ready to love. Like, to love on and be loved on. And that is the basis, I feel like, of really setting a really great relationship with young people, especially, and people in general, people in general. But like, so when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about, there's a lot, like, because I know that people are just like, especially like when creating like community agreements, or especially when creating like, what do they call them in the schoolhouse sometimes? Like, they say they don't, just rules, synonyms to rules, right? Synonyms to rules. And the number one that usually goes up there is respect, right? And so then we have to have this whole conversation about how we are going to define what respect means, right? And I'm like, well, what's respect mean to you? Because it might be different to me. And I'm just like, if you are not like, first of all, I do not think that you can take any type of information from people who you do and take it to heart, who you don't love. Like, who you do not have that type of connection with. I did some study like a while ago about Dr. Rita Pearson, who did this like amazing TED Talk years ago. And one of her points were, you can't, if kids don't like you, you can't teach them. And
that is really,
like, but that's just like,
I just need everyone to pause for a minute and be like, which teacher did you learn the most from?
Right.
Literally.
Right.
Like, which teachers did you learn the most from? I guarantee you didn't learn a whole lot from a teacher you did not like.
Right. Right.
And liking is not about having something in common with them. It's not about being like, I don't even, like, I've loved teachers that I don't even mess with people like that. I don't even have friends that act like that. But I like that teacher. That teacher gave me the attention they gave themselves.
Yes.
And so all of this conversation reminds me a lot of just the concept of colonization, of coming into a space and saying, well, okay, I'm going to have control now, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that.
Yeah.
It's not about having a relationship with that. It's about having control over these people or this entity to make it do whatever it is that you think that it needs to do, so that you can all be successful together for this, future, this thing in the future that you all are going to be happy together, depending on what terms of happiness look like. But you don't create an actual relationship. Right. And when you talk about love, I think people have allergy to this word love. Because they think that it's like, ooh, that's gushy. How can I say that I love somebody that I don't even know? What do you mean? We just ended a meeting with somebody today that for the second time, this was the second time we met with them, and I ended by saying, I love you. Because that's what I felt. I felt love for this person.
Yeah.
This person that I'm not deeply connected with.
Right.
So far, I've only worked with in a business atmosphere. But we vibe in a way that I'm like, your spirit and my spirit, we connect. I have love for you. And while I feel more comfortable saying to someone, I have love for you, than saying, I love you.
Yeah.
You know, and how much do that children, and like you said, it's not just the youth. I think we talk about youth so often as if they're different from adults. And I think the reality is youth are adults like on 10,000, you know, like times everything by 10,000, the senses, the emotions, like everything, like just more heightened. But it's the same, you know, we need to feel that love, and it's so easy for us to feel it. But then we don't allow ourselves to communicate that. And when you think that you can have a connection with somebody without offering them that love, now you're projecting onto them whatever it is that you think that they need to do, and you're trying to control them in a way that's really dehumanizing.
Exactly.
You know? You expect young people to turn around and respect you when you're literally not giving them any respect for their human experience. So when you all are talking about asking and having that spirit of inquiry and communicating with the child to see what is, or a young person to see what's going on with them, when you aren't doing that, it's like, imagine when you are going through your day as an adult and you have a million things you're thinking about, or you're transitioning from this thing to the next thing. Every time you have to take a deep breath or talk yourself down. Young people don't know how to do that yet. We're still teaching them how to do that. And a lot of us don't know, and we snap at each other. And then we expect young people to act better.
Right.
When they're watching us and we're snapping at each other. Yeah.
Listen, but I think it's so important because, like, I think that leading with love, leading with inquiry of like, who is this person that I'm working with? Like, this young person that I'm meeting, like, I want to know about you, right? I think that that's already right there. Building that relationship is disrupting institution in that space. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can make this, in this room, we're going to have a magical, a dope experience. In this room, we're going to create new norms, create a new version of what community looks like. We're going to set on new practices and new traditions, and they're going to be sacred for us. Because we're going to be able to share this space together, but they're also going to be super sacred things, super sacred tools that you can take, and hopefully those will interrupt all of the things, like all the other institutions that you might be involved in, right? Like, especially when doing things during the school day, that can be a little challenging, because immediately after that class is over, after that period is over or whatever, like, young people are immediately back into this institution, right? Or into this world that they have to go back into all these different types of structures or whatnot. But like, starting off with love, starting off with making that relationship, starting off with just asking how someone is doing is already interrupting and disrupting a lot of the norms that they've already had for that day. You know, and to me, that is like the biggest piece in terms of really talking about some of these different harmful practices that go along in all the other spaces that they're involved in. So just different. There are a bunch of different strategies that are some really dope people are taking in order to get there. But it's also very unlike things I've ever seen before, right? Very unlike curriculum designs and development that we went through, that our parents, that grandparents, like, so on and so forth. Like, this is a new, like, this is from Sister Act too, but she's like, this is a brand new day, right? Like, this is a brand new type of situation, like, and we have a really great opportunity to create some new tools and some new productive constructs.
So I'm excited. I'm really excited. I want to know, what are some of those, there's some of the things that you could share. It doesn't have to be everything. Like, what are some things where you're like, look, doing this has really changed programming for me, or changed the way that young people show up in space for me. Just incorporating this into my program, or incorporating like what tools, or can you give us one or two tools that you feel like you added in your programming and you notice the shift and you keep those kind of in your back pocket? What are some of those things?
Yeah, I'm a really big person on traditions and like ceremonies during space. And I the reason why I say that is because one, it's super dope for us to like do something in our session that we're going to do every single time that we completely made up, right? So whether that be a check-in style, or an opportunity for us, or a way that we check other people, you know what I'm saying? Like I've definitely been in spaces that we've used the ouch, like if you're in a space and like somebody has said something and you didn't bang with it in the ways that they thought you would, right? And you're just like, ooh, but wait, I want you to be better, and I want us to address that really quick. So I'm gonna say ouch, so we could really pause what we're doing here, and we can have this really quick conversation, because as your peer, as your mentor, as your pupil, like I want to be able to make sure that you're great. You know what I'm saying? So like those are just some they're all relationship practices and relationship strategies that I personally have done. But in terms of like the bigger, more so strategies is taking, like, not just having conversations and where we're like giving a task, reflecting on it individually, then coming back and talking about it as a group, right? Like I feel like that's like the very like basis of like education, right? So like I teach you something, then you gonna go work on it by yourself, and then we gonna come back and we gonna check everybody's answers. Like, no, not necessarily doing that, but like let's all reflect together. Like that was super, we just got something, and like what are your raw emotions towards this right now?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're seeing it, how does it make you feel? Right? How does it make you feel?
I was thinking about that.
That right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that a lot of times that we remove, just as much as we remove love, we remove feeling
Yep.
from
Mm-hmm.
learning. And because if somebody would have asked me when I was in 5th grade, how did math make me feel, we could have probably been in a whole different spot with Kinnethia on today. You know what I'm saying? Like we could have probably just been a little bit different, because I had some feelings towards the mathematics, and I needed to probably talk to somebody about what that was. But like I just imagine like if we just had like, yo, so we just learned long division, y'all. How are we? Are we good? Do we need to take a minute? Do we need to take it? Yes, I need to take 2.
Yes.
Like that's what I need. Because,
Yes.
because like we're so quick to be checking for understanding. Like, did you learn the concept? Yes, I took in what you said, but I also need you to ask me how I'm doing, because it was hard. Yeah. And that was extremely, and that was difficult. And like, that also kind of leads me into that point of like, if we're not asking how people are feeling or how people are doing in something, then I just think that we're allowing so many people to struggle in silence, right? And like, we're just silenced, and like, we're making that a norm. And to me, that is something that takes years to unlearn, right? Like I can remember when I was a young person being in educational spaces, in and out of school, where I was taught where I was given some very heavy information in terms of, in attempts to educate me about my history and my culture, right? And not one, not one of those experiences, because they all thought they all had intent, right? It could have been productive when they were writing the lesson or the plan that they were making, but it wasn't necessarily necessarily helpful. So how are you feeling? How was that?
And so I just wanted to ask, because I hear you say intent. Does that mean that, and what I'm interpreting that is as when someone says, well, my intentions were good. You know, so somebody has a good intention, and
Mm-hmm.
because they have good intentions, they assume that that's enough. That good intention is not going to cause you harm, because how they define good intention must be how you define it. And so that's how it's coming across for me. But I want to ask you, what do you mean by intent?
So I just use intent as the word it is, right? We so easily attach to intention good at the top of it, right? So if I was intentional about something, it had to be a productive thing, right? So even though I was intentional, there obviously can't be any wrong in it because I was doing something that was great. Intent is just, intent by itself is thought behind an action, right? Thought behind a meaning, or thought behind doing something, right? But like we so quickly say, oh, I had good intentions, right? Like no one's gonna be out here claiming, oh no, I had some pretty negative intentions, some pretty harmful intentions in front of this. Like people don't want to say, like people aren't saying that. So we need to look at the word intent and hold it by itself. So when I'm talking about people have intent, I'm saying I'm gonna give it to them. They probably thought about that before they did it.
Okay.
But I don't know the source of it. So I'm not gonna say that it was good intentions. I'm gonna say they had intent.
Right.
They had some thought.
Okay.
It may have been great. It may have been completely on the spot trying to destruct some things.
Yeah.
But like, call it out for what it is. No, they had intention.
And sometimes they might see their intention as good, but they don't even see that what their intent to do is not helpful for anybody else around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because maybe you didn't invite other people to be a part of that thinking process. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't ever put out anything to young people without running it by other people first. Because I can give you everything that I have, but no, I'm going to, more minds in some cases are better, especially in putting out something that's going to benefit or hopefully benefit other people. Bring other thoughts to the table with that.
And I love how you said that you put out ideas, like you come with a thought and you're like, I'm thinking this and I wonder what the young people have to say about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Not like, this is what we're doing, but here's a thought and what can we create together? What can we do with each other? Not what can you do to me or for me, but what can we do with each other? And I love how you brought that into the conversation. I know I want to give you a chance if there's anything you're thinking.
Well, I just wanted to say that I really loved what you said about how we take the feeling out of educational spaces. And I think it's more than educational spaces. I always tie it back to the larger culture that we have in our society, because it really is void of emotion and the right to bring up emotion and talk about that. And even when you talk about like the frustration with mathematics and then that not being able to be discussed and then having to move on to the next thing and being frustrated still, and then maybe you get in trouble in that situation because of the way that you react. And this is a perpetual thing. That's when you say that so much can be avoided if we tap into people and see who are we working with and how are they and what's going on for them, because we're missing, limitless opportunities to actually be intentional with what we're doing, and I think that you spoke at the beginning about how this is specifically out of school program development, but I want to tie this back to the educational institution, because I think that I hear so often teachers and educators saying things like, oh, I want to, change my curriculum, but I don't have the right textbooks, or I don't have the right, permission from authority. And the suggestions and the tools you've offered today are so simple. It's really not even much about curriculum. It's sure you can tie it into your curriculum. Even if you tie it into your curriculum to be even more powerful, there's ways to do that without messing with your core standards or that, without changing your textbooks. But the examples that you offered today are so simple. Like asking a question, how are you? Or how was that for everyone? Or let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, and then because I was thinking about for teachers who are going through a tremendous shift right now, because there's a lot of pressure. I just want to give, I want to recognize how much pressure that there constantly is for somebody who's a creative leader, a teacher, an educator, right? And we all call them creative leaders because we're always having to be creative in situations, right? Unpredictable situations, and how much pressure there is right now within COVID, and knowing that the state, people are telling the institution, and I'm going to say like the state when we talk about government, the ways of whether there's superintendent, however you say it, right?
Superintendent.
How there are these ways that people are asking, everybody has to shift everything. And while everything is moving, it's so easy to be like, I can't do this. Right? There's so much stress or things that are centered around that. And instead of thinking about it as, whoa, this right here, let's just center in as everybody's having this moment. How do we bring it right here to the feeling? Just recognize that we are all adjusting. Right?
Absolutely.
I'm adjusting. Look, I had a hard time last night trying to figure this out, but I'm here with you today as the young people, and them knowing that, and also we talk about what Brene Brown says, leading with vulnerability, right? Feelings matter too. And just, I wanted to address that for creative leaders. And when I say creative leaders, I mean educators, teachers, all of those people. We know that there are certain things that can be very interesting and fascinating and shifting and ever moving. And it's how we approach those things. How we find ways to integrate those things, because it's rather than seeing the bridge where people are seeing walls. Seeing the bridges. Right? And that's what I'm hearing you say. That's what I'm It's like, where are the bridges instead of the walls? And when you are met with a wall, how do you navigate that? Because it's very necessary in order to get to that relationship.
I think the thing that I'm taking away on top of that is that those bridges can be very, you don't need a lot of expensive resources or a whole lot of anything. It's very simple. You know what I mean? It's like just the little things, not focusing on the big lesson or like the big program as much. All those things are important. We're sitting here talking about development and narrowing in on how it's really just the little day-to-day interactions. And how we're being with each other. It's not about some grand concept or resource that you need to go and seek out.
Right. I can't tell you how many webinars I went to especially during the closure here in Wisconsin, but like how many webinars I went to that literally was saying the same exact thing. So I'm sitting here like, obviously somebody's either not getting it or we don't have nothing else to talk about. But like one of like what I also saw huge, like, you know what I'm saying? Cause like we could really just be real, right? Like people want to tell us like, okay, this is what you need to do in order to work with young people. But what I was like trying to scream, especially during that closure, like, wait a minute, everybody in this space, we need to take a step back because we're going to start diving into trying to be the fixers in this situation. We're going to start diving, trying to put out the fires on this. But what we need to do really is step back for a minute, tap your neighbor, say, neighbor, are you okay? How you doing? You know what I'm saying? And like, we didn't do that. Like, especially as creative leaders who are specifically working with young people, we were like, oh, we need to do all these different things in order to better show up for our young people. And I was just like, yes, but in order to do that, we need to show up for ourselves.
Yes.
Because if I do not have no type of oxygen, I cannot give anybody else any type of anything, right? If I don't have no water in my little spot, how am I going to make lemonade? I got some... Listen, you have to have a sense of self. You know what I'm saying? You have to have a sense of self. And you also have to be able to have different revenues to feed yourself in that moment. And I'm not necessarily just talking about like, oh, we need to make sure the money is flowing into your pocket, but like, what is feeding your soul? What is feeding your mind? What is feeding your heart? Like, we need to really dive into all those things. So like, I personally think, though there was some really interesting intention that went into wanting to create all of these new social emotional learning agendas and this trauma informed care agendas. Like, I was just like, yo, are the adults all right in the room right now? Like, are we good? Because if we can't go and start digging on anybody else's mind if our shovel is dirty, you know what I mean? If our shovel is like all corroded on the side, we need to go in.
You can't.
I don't got my
mask on. Come on now, that is the most common. Look,
every single time we get on that airplane, they literally tell you, hey, a reminder.
Yeah, and this is the thing, as a word across it all, is we are putting the people who we are serving in danger when we are not taking care of ourselves and being intentional with how we are leading.
Absolutely.
We're here to support the young people and give them, the resources and the support that they need so that they can be successful, so that they can thrive, so that they can grow. We are literally putting them in danger by leading them while we are halfway falling apart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah. Like, and that's just such a harm to everybody in that situation. Wait, you gonna say something?
No, I wanted to, because I know we just got to talking.
Yeah.
In here, and I want to get us to getting back to that one thing.
Yes.
As we wrap, because we had a very full, like, I know that for me it was very full conversation, and really, like, when we're talking about counterculture education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we are dealing with self-care, community engagement, play, and artistic expression, those are the ways that are counter to the institution, right?
Yeah.
And you're naming it is almost fortifying and uplifting the way of like, this is it, and this is the time.
Yeah.
For us to do that. And I wanted to ask you if there's a takeaway that you want people from watching this video, if there's something that they could take away, what would that be?
Yeah. My biggest thing is ask somebody how they're doing and be patient enough to hear the answer. Be patient, be open enough to hear the answer. Removing your assumptions from that. Just be patient and open to hear the answer. Because that right there can really be an introduction into a plethora of beautiful, beautiful relationships. And I think that shoot, I want to know if that actually works as a pickup line, but you know what I'm saying, just asking somebody, hey, how you doing, but for real, like, you know what I'm saying, like, but like in general, like, I would just love for people to stop and not necessarily to just stop what they're doing, but just pause for a minute. Ask somebody how they're doing. Ask someone, how did that make you feel? Ask someone if it's okay to like move forward. Like, are we all here? Are we all ready? Like, are you ready? Are you ready? So
I love that. And I love that that's a tool you can bring into the workspace, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said, pause and ask your peer, your colleague, you know, ask your superior, your supervisor, ask your
and be prepared to listen.
And yes, that's beautiful.
And be prepared to listen. Like, honestly, I think that can just make the time for it. So go a long way.
I'm jumping in, but I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to close this out with gift giving. It's one of my favorite ways to check out. So as I would describe it, if I were sitting in a circle with young people, I would say, imagine the gift of words that you could give to somebody. A word that you can give to somebody that you want them to know, that you want them to hear, to help them move through the rest of their day. Right? And once you imagine that word, like, think about the word that you want to give to somebody, whether it be I want you to have a joyful day, or I want you to welcome in this because this, right? Think about that with the person sitting next to you. And once you have that word and the reason why you've chosen that word for that person, close your hand so that we know that you have the gift in your hand and you're ready to give it to somebody.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give us an opportunity to think about the gift that we want to give to each other. And since we're not sitting in a circle, I'm just going to put the names out there. Like, I'm going to give you an opportunity. If you can give a gift to either one, which would it be? We're okay. Which way would you pass your gift?
Oh, I'll pass my gift to you.
So I'm going to pass my gift to you, and you'll pass your gift to Kinnethia. Okay. So now I'm going to give us a moment to just think about the gift. Okay, and whoever has their gift, you can feel free to start. I'm gonna go. So, Kid God, I want to give you the gift of certainty because I want you to be certain and sure of your power in the world, because I'm certain of it, and I'm certain that the world would be missing you if you did not show up. So I want to give you the gift of certainty so you can show up into the world in the way that I know that you can.
Thank you. You knew I needed that one. Kinnethia, I want to give you the gift of light, both of bright, warm light that makes you feel covered and held, but also of lightness and ease in your body, movement, mind, and whatever it is that you're doing. I want you to feel light on your feet and like your movements, both physically and all the things that you are doing, come with an amount of ease that you feel are effortless.
Thank you. DW, I want to give you the gift of grace, and I want to define that for you in how I define it. I define that as the name of many of our ancestors who have walked this earth and who have shed warmth, who have shed love, who have shed a presence that's always continuously there. I want to give you that. I want those ancestors to surround you. I want them to remind you of your warmth. I want them to remind you of your love and their love for you. I want them to remind you of the presence that you share in spaces and the presence that always remains when you leave those spaces as well. It's sitting with people, it's sitting with the ancestors, and it's ready.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
I love that.
I love Kinnethia.
Taking notes.
I adore your friendship. I adore your mind. I love having these kinds of conversations with you. And I just feel so blessed that you joined us for this one and that you welcomed us to record it and share it with our community, our tribe, so that we can all be in conversation about this.
And I also want to say that gift giving, I was from a restorative justice program called Palante. They gave me that gift, and I've been. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, it sure does.
That to you, so you know where it came from.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Yeah, thank y'all. This was what I needed today. Thank you.
Oh yeah, where can people follow up with you and keep in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is via Facebook. It is my name, Kinnethia Tolson-Johnson. Y'all will give them on the beautiful, beautiful, correct spelling of that. Kinnethia. Let me put some respect on it. Kinnethia Tolson-Johnson. There we go. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so yep, as you all know, we are counterculture educator, and this is our conversation with our homie Kinnethia, and we just want to leave you all with a reminder that you can do it, you belong, and you are most definitely enough. Peace.
Peace, y'all.